The Water's Edge Museum sits at the Water's Edge in Oxford, Maryland. Oxford was Talbot County's first city, and was one of the only port on the Eastern Shore for tobacco, and manufacturing goods coming in and out of the country, and people. And so the Water's Edge itself is significant because that is where the ships, came in, most likely carrying my ancestors, because I am born and raised in Talbot County, several generations, too many to probably count. Oxford was, I would say, the hub of tobacco, the tobacco industry mainly. Like that was the major thing that was coming in and out of that area at that time. Obviously, that was also a middle passage stop. So Oxford was the only documented middle passage stop for Maryland, Virginia, and Delaware at that time. So not only was it kind of the hub for tobacco, but it was also kind of the center of the slave trade in this area at that time. And so not only were goods being moved in and out, but people were being moved in and out as well. And so that is kind of, I would say, the historical context behind why it's called the Water's Edge and where it's located. Slave trade industry made up a large part of our population at that time, and contributed quite a bit to, obviously, the foundation of the area. So during the Civil War, I feel like that was where the community itself began to divide. I think that, the concept of the Union and the Confederacy, I think that's where we really began to see some of the upheaval and divide. And we're still living that because we still have the last standing Confederate monument in Talbot County in the state of Maryland on our courthouse lawn. When it comes to what makes Water's Edge special and kind of what we want people to know, not only locally, but nationally and internationally, I would say, is that it is the first museum to acknowledge the work of the founding Black families and acknowledge founding Black families all together. And so it isn't just that you have to be from Maryland, but Maryland has so many international ties. And so we want to make sure that we're reaching across to not only tell the local story, but we also want to make sure we're telling this international story that spans decades and decades, when we're really thinking about what people of color have done to thrive and strive, and the work that they've put in to be a part of the building of this country. And this museum is where it starts for me. I would want to take the next generation of our family to this museum. And I would say the county itself, to show them all the changes. It has changed so much in my own lifetime. And just to show them how the area has developed and evolved. But as it relates to the Water's Edge, we're talking about my the next generation. This would be their great grandfathers and aunts and uncles. And so again, going back to that identity piece, showing them where they came from, the idea of the founding Black family and the ingenuity that went into the building of this country, and the contributions that Black people made, not only all across the world, but right here where we stand. And this is home. And all that has been found, and artifacts and all the different things that are so critical and essential to this area, all have an element and an essence of what it is to be an African-American person, from religion to life on the Eastern Shore. When I stand in the Water's Edge, I go down there, I feel like I'm amongst the family. And I really do, because it's that protection and that sense of self and sense of the future. All of that lives in the museum. I feel like we can see the beautiful side of things by knowing its full truth. And while we enjoy the Chesapeake and all of the luxuries that are associated with it, we would be remiss not to educate people on the history of that area. I think about the Chesapeake Bay in a multitude of different ways. I enjoy life at the Water's Edge, and I enjoy spending time there. And now I can freely go up and down the streets of that area without any problem, and people know who I am. And I know that I don't even want to say 50 years ago, I'm going to say 20 years ago, that probably wouldn't have been. 10 years ago, that might not have even been the case either. And so I think that it is not only something we need to do, I think it's our obligation to talk about the Chesapeake Bay as a vessel, to talk about the Chesapeake Bay in context of, 100 years ago, the water's edge was where enslaved people lived, so that when ships came to the water's edge, people who were wealthy and affluent in the town wouldn't smell the stench of dead bodies. Whereas now, waterfront property means that you are wealthy and that you are of the privileged class. So I think that it is not only, we're not doing justice by only highlighting Chesapeake Bay, the Chesapeake Bay as this beautiful entity, but we need to tell its full story, because we will still come out to love the Bay and love what it represents. But we just need to better understand what it truly is and what it truly means to this area, so that we can have these elements and aspects of American history, because I continue to use that term. This is not Black history. This is American history. So we are now adding our local American history into our curriculum.